Howdy folks, Rudrose here, and today we are doing one of my favorite activities, which is getting people from other card games and having them guess about cards from our game. Today we have a Yu-Gi-Oh! And Final Fantasy player joining me today to guess and rate some of these Disney Lorcana cards. My very good friend and old testing partner from the FF days, Mr. Ghoul02. Ghoul, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited. I always love looking at other card games and just it's always fun because you'll read something in one card game and it'll be like wild in your brain, and then you'll but it's like, no, this card's like fine.
Yeah.
You know, maybe someone will play it. But seeing those differences in card games is always like super cool. So as Travis said, I got my start in card games in Yu-Gi-Oh! I have multiple tops in pretty large tournaments in Yu-Gi-Oh! Mostly one-tricking Medolce over the last 5 years now. I'm getting old. And then I'm also the current Oceania Final Fantasy TCG champion for anybody that does follow the channel back from the old days. So
He is. Yeah, he knows his stuff, so we'll see if we can trick him. I'm actually going to put a link. This isn't the first video we've done of these. We did one right at the start of set 5, so I'm going to put a link in this description. If you haven't seen that one, you can go check that out too. He did a really good job last time. He was able to pretty accurately guess these. So I'm going to show a card on screen. We'll take turns reading it to each other, and then he's just going to give me his rating, whether he thinks it's great, bad, maybe just okay, maybe great, but only in one deck, however you see fit to rate him. So you ready to get going, sir?
let's do it.
All right. And our first card is Daisy Duck, Donald State. This is a 1-cost uninkable, 1/4 stat line, has the ability Big Prize. Whenever this character quests, each opponent reveals the top card of their deck. If it's a character card, they may put it into their hand. Otherwise, they put it on the bottom of their deck, and it has 2 lore. Daniel, what do you think?
So my first impression is that's a pretty darn good stat line for a 1-drop. I remember... I haven't played much Lorcana, if any, but I remember the first set, the big cards were the 1-cost 2 lore gainers. This one is, or 3 lore gainers. This is a 1-cost 2 lore gainers with much better stats than those had, and a pretty good upside. I don't know how likely that is to hit, but even if it's a 1-cost pretty good body with a 50-50 to draw a card each turn. Each opponent reveals.
Oh yeah, sorry. It gives it to your opponent if they reveal it.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is I know that this was a pretty popular card in early Magic aggro, actually, then, which is, there's a goblin that if they reveal the top card of the deck and it was a land, they got to draw it.
It was, yes, it was, it's been compared to that goblin, so good memory.
And that card is really good for a long time. From what I understand, though, characters are a lot better than lands. One of the big reasons the goblin was so good is that, you can give your opponent lands. You're helping them, they'll be happy to take them, but lands don't really deal with the problem. And, if you give your opponent a character, then you're kind of giving them the outs to the Daisy. I'm going to say that this card probably is not very good, because I think characters are probably the most important card types in the game, and giving your opponent access to them is probably not very good.
He says not very good. He is incorrect. This is the best aggro card in the game.
Okay.
And mainly because of the stat line. Normal stats for a 1-cost inkable are either a 2/2 or a 1/3. This having 4 health, there's just almost nothing that can deal with this early in the game efficiently. You have to spend a lot of resources on it. And while the character thing can hurt you, there are times you'll legit give them the answer to the Daisy. There are other times it'll either outright whiff, or it doesn't really matter because you're going so fast that no matter how many... they can still only play so much ink a turn, right? They can only go 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3. So there are times that even with the character, it just doesn't matter. It's too much overwhelming lore too quickly. So this is an absolute staple in all aggro decks.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could have definitely seen it being a really good aggro card, but again, to me, I saw a character, and the downside, if you quest twice with this, it's pot of greed for your opponent potentially.
Yeah. And
which is a big deal.
Yeah, there are times it will bite you in the butt, but for the most part, it's worth the risk just because the stats are so strong.
Makes sense. Yeah, 1/4 sounds very difficult to... I saw the stat line, my eyes popped a little bit. I was like, what the heck?
That's a lot of stats early. All right, we'll see how you do on the second one. Go ahead and read this one for me.
All right, so this is Lilo Escape Artist, 2-cost inkable. 1/2. Starting your turn, if it's in your discard, you can play her and she enters Exerted. So Exerted is tapped, right?
Correct, yeah. Sideways.
2 lore. So there's some Stuff I like about this. I think it's kind of a weird thing that she's both inkable and also you want to like discard her. That's a very weird thing. Um, I have to imagine this is absurd because it doesn't matter how she gets into your discard, right? If your opponent kills her, she just keeps coming back.
Correct. And there's no limit to that. Yeah, you can revive as long as you
Yeah,
can pay for it. If it matters, just because you don't know the turn order, the way Lorcana works, it's ready, set, draw. So you ready, you untap everything. The set phase is when abilities like this trigger. So you do have to make this decision before you draw your card for the turn, if that matters.
yeah, but there's no legend roll. If you have 4 Lilos in your
Correct.
graveyard, you can just do this 4 times, right?
Correct.
This has to be absurd. Like the only thing that I can think of that would make it bad is if you just can't want to cast this, like play this. Like if you play this on 2, like the body seems pretty small, but like there has to be like a. I mean, I know a whole new world was a card back in the day. Like you could just whole new world this, then just get 4 bodies the next turn. That seems absurd. This has to be really strong. Like one of the best cards in the color.
He nails it this time. Absolutely. This card is affectionately referred to as Zombie Lilo because she just keeps coming back, and there's nothing in the game currently that deals with like exiling from your discard. So, with very few exceptions, there's a few random things, but for the most part, once she's in there, she's just going to stay there. And then, so what'll happen is like aggro, as it kind of peters out, they'll use a board wipe, and then, okay, well, I'll just use my ink for turn to keep bringing the Lilo back. And yeah, she's exerted so she can be challenged right away, but it then puts the onus on your opponent. You have to answer this over and over and over again. So there's a few cards that can punish her properly that say, actually, I'm going to make it a detriment if you keep bringing her back. But for the most part, it's just insane nonstop recursion. So and you even alluded to like tricks to get her in the discard. You're honestly just happy to play this on 2. Like if you go Daisy on 1, Lilo on 2, you've got 4 lore on the board, and if they answer this, it could just come back later. So she's very strong.
All right.
Well done. All right, this is gonna be our final amber card, and it is the Sugar Rush Speedway. This is a location, the finish line. 2 cost, uninkable. 6 movement, so you have to pay 6 ink to move a character here, and then it has 7 willpower. It has 1 ability, Bring It Home, Kid. When you move a character here from a location, you may banish this location to gain 3 lore and draw 3 cards. What do you think?
So I remember these were the things last time that I had the most issues conceptualizing, which makes sense. It's a card type that just does not necessarily have a good analog in other card games. Like the closest I could tell is almost like a Planeswalker in Magic, and I've always been really bad at evaluating those. So this one does not gain you any lore when you play it, correct?
Correct.
Like it doesn't have like the passive lore that some locations give you, I know.
Correct, yeah. So if this sits there for 3 turns, it technically is just sitting there for 3 turns.
So obviously 3 lore, 3 cards is pretty good. I feel like you're probably not unhappy to even pay 6 for that. Like that sounds like pretty solid value there. The problem is you're not just paying 6 for that. You're paying 2 for this, which is a card that does not have any other utility. And then you have to have another location, right? You can't just like move it there from nowhere.
Right. You have to have another one.
So you have to have another card, plus you have to have a character, plus the lore to put the character at the first location, then 6 to move it at this one. I mean, the payoff seems really strong, but that's so many hoops to jump through. I cannot imagine this is a very strong card.
So you don't think it's very good?
I think this card reads pretty bad.
This is very good in the one deck it goes in, but it will never see like generic use play, right? So you did pretty much hit the nail on the head. There is, as you see in the title, it says finish line. There's a version of a location called the starting line, and the starting line says you essentially get to, if you can exert a character there, you throw it to any other location for free. So you get to essentially skip the 6 ink cost of this. So when paired with the starting line, there is this kind of synergy where you can get characters there for free because you never want to pay 6. If you're having to pay 6 for this, like that's just too expensive. So there are ways to cheat characters. There's some characters that say, hey, when I enter, move a character from one location to the other for free. So in that specific deck, it is strong, but you're absolutely right that outside of all this build around to make it work, generically, it's just not good.
That makes sense. Yeah, I didn't really think there probably are characters that say, like, you can move me to a location for 3 less or something.
Yeah.
They probably would build support for this. I was more so just thinking the sheer number of cards you'd have to line to make this work. Because like I said, you have to have a character in another location and this location, and all of them have to live for...
Right.
Can you go from one location? Can you go, like, move to this location, same turn, move to another? Or can you only move to one location
You
per turn?
can, but not with the like the starting line specifically requires you to exert them, so you have to wait a turn. But if you could pay it, like if you had 2 of these on the field and you had 12 ink, you could pay 6 to go to one and then 6 to move it to the next one.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably not how you want to do it, but
Exactly.
at least you can.
That's not, yeah. So this one's kind of just weird to evaluate because obviously you don't have the context around it, but you still pretty much nailed it. So great in the deck, it's good in, but beyond that, just kind of unusable. All right, we're going to move on to my favorite color. This is purple amethyst, and we have. Go ahead.
This is Donald Duck, Flustered Sorcerer. 7 cost, uninkable, 5/6, 3 lore. Obfuscate. Opponents need 25 lore to win the game. And when it comes to magic spells, proper pronunciation is key.
That's
You
true.
know, that's very
this
important.
is his most Kingdom Hearts looking art, I think, in the game we have.
He's very, very black magey for sure.
Yeah.
So this is what Yu-Gi-Oh players would call a floodgate. A floodgate is a card that kind of changes the rules for your opponent or makes it more difficult for them to play the game. And there are differing levels of floodgates, different things that they do to make the game more difficult. Some of them are very strong, to the point where a lot of floodgates are banned. Some of them are almost completely useless. I'm kind of like doing a bit of a cheat here, but I'm looking at the bottom. That looks like that's one of the higher rarity symbols in the game, which makes me think that they kind of think this card should be decent.
I'll give that away. Yeah, if it's gold, it's a legendary, so that's like our highest rarity card.
Yeah. Like, so that's an interesting thing to know. And then obviously not every high rarity card is good. They can't all be strong. But
you are correct. In most card games, they try to make those, interesting or good or basically worth their value.
Yeah. So a couple of things here that are popping out. 7 cost uninkable would be kind of scary. This is not going to come online for a very long time. And there's nothing else you can do with it. You can't draw this. If you draw this on turn 1, you're waiting 7 turns to play it, or I guess 5 if you're in, what was it, blue that does the ramping in the game?
The ramp, yeah.
The body size seems good. 3 lore gain is good. I really don't know how to evaluate the floodgate, because I remember last time removal actually was relatively difficult to find in Lorcana. There's just not a lot that just says, choose this thing and kill it. But also, by the time you get to 7 ink, aren't you doing stuff like banish all characters opponent controls like relatively like frequently? Like, what was it, like be prepared? I think it was.
Yeah,
like,
banishes all characters on the board.
Was just like a board wipe. Like this would feel so bad to do this into a be prepared. I know that like rotation's happening, but it might not have happened yet. I don't know when that's happening.
It has not happened yet, no.
And like, even if this does stick, does 5 lore matter that much? Like, I'm trying to think like, in some ways, this is like a healing salve in Magic. It's like heal 5, but only while this is on field. When it leaves, they also, deal 5 to you. Like, that seems kind of mad. Like, my head says this card really doesn't do enough for its cost.
Is that what you're going with?
I'm going to go this card probably not that good, unless there's just a ramp deck or a way to, like, cheat this into play from the graveyard or something.
Your years of experience serve you well, sir. You are correct. This card sees no play. As much as it's a fun idea, pretty much everyone has universally agreed that if this was on a cheaper body, like against an aggro deck, you're dead on turn 5. You're never even going to get to 7. So if this was like on a 3 cost or something where you could really help kind of slow them down, maybe. But like you point out, by the time you get there, and then it also implies that you're losing the game, because if you're ahead, you don't need this effect anyway. So it's just one of those cool idea, but just way too many pieces and hoops, as you essentially alluded to, that just makes it unplayable.
Or even if it like stacked, maybe your opponent needs 5 more lore to win the game. That way, like like if you have multiples of this, the second one doesn't have a text box.
Yeah, that's a great insight. That's a really good point too. All right, sorry, Donald, you gotta go. Maybe we'll have better luck with this next one. This is Jafar, the Striking Illusionist. This is enchanted, so this is technically a legendary, but the enchanted is like our full art version from FF. But it's the same card as the legendary. This is just the enchanted version. I actually was lucky enough to pull this card. So he is a 4/5. He shifts for 5. He has evasive. quests for 1 lore, and he has the ability Power Beyond Measure. During your turn, while this card is exerted, character's exerted, whenever you draw a card, gain 1 lore. What do you think?
So this is interesting. So there's a lot of text on the card, which is usually
Yes.
a pretty good sign. I like the inkability of it. I think that the extra utility is pretty nice. The body actually is pretty decent, especially for evasive. This thing seems like it'd be a pain in the butt to get off the field.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much to evaluate shift. I know that like there's been a couple cards historically that were okay with it, but like to me the mechanic seems very finicky to line up and make work, where it's not better to just cast the card, but it's probably just like a decent bonus, if not like, you know, actually relevant. And like it only quests for 1 lore, but also it's got the bonuses that kind of like gives it like extra lore in a way. So the real question then becomes, how hard is it to draw cards once you get deeper into the game? It sounds hilarious if you can like play this and then quest with it, gain 1 lore, and then a whole new world or something, and then just draw, was it 7? And just gain 7 lore out of nowhere. Like that seems hilariously strong, and it's evasive, so it's going to be hard to deal with. Do you mind reminding me the ink cost of a whole new world? Is it 6?
It's 5. It's a 5-cost song, so it can be sung.
Can he sing that?
He
and
can
then
sing this.
And he's considered exerted when it happens, so
Correct.
you draw the cards?
Yep.
Or
Yeah, so when they
lore?
sing, the moment they sing, they're exerted, so any exerted effects would trigger.
That seems pretty hilarious. I forgot about even singing as an alternative. So we have a card that combos with one of the best cards in the game, at least in the early days, and just kind of says you win the game if you line it up. I think this card is probably quite strong.
Quite strong. Going with that?
Yeah.
I had to put it in here because, of course, Reign of Jafar is our current set, as you can see him back there. And yes, you hit the nail on the head. When this card came out in set 3, there was a deck called Jafar Wheel. And the whole point was you put out a Jafar on 2 or 4, you shift him on 5, he immediately sings Whole New World, and you gain 7 lore and draw 7 cards. And you can just like OTK them in like 1 or 2 turns. And then if you had another character who could sing... Yeah.
You start looping that because the first Whole New World probably draws you into more copies of a Whole New World as well.
And then you can have another character sing. He also works with smaller stuff like Friends on the Other Side, which just draws you cards. There's like a magic lamp that says if you have a Jafar on field, just banish this lamp for free, draw 2 cards, and then, oh no, suddenly now that's getting you 2 lore. So he is a bit of a build around. You can't just jam him anywhere. And the shift, you really do want to shift him because that immediate shift sing is so powerful. But yeah, you pretty much nailed it. Like, you have to build around him a bit, but if you do, he is a huge payoff for those decks.
That makes sense.
All right, well, we're not done with Amethyst yet. We've got the Library, a gift for Bell. This is a 3-cost, move 1, 8 health, and then it has 1 effect with 1 lore. Whenever a character is banished while here, you may draw a card. What do you think?
Alright, again, this is the card type I'm going to struggle with the most, but of the ones I've seen, this one just, I don't know what it is. It feels like they tried to push this one a little bit. 3 to play doesn't necessarily seem excessive, especially when like it is inkable as well, like if it isn't correct to play a location. I really think that like, to me, that reads like it's huge for locations in particular, because they don't do that much else. It even gains 1 lore each turn, which is nice. The move cost is so cheap, and like the effect is... The only thing about the effect that I don't love, honestly, is like, does your opponent usually care to banish your characters that often? Like, I remember, again, removal in Lorcana was kind of at a premium, and sure, kind of adding this tax of like, you know, whenever my thing dies, I get to draw. But how often, realistically, are they going to have to do that? 8 defense or whatever seems really high. Like I remember, what was it? Was it Maui that had 6? It was like the bar for whether a location was good or not.
Very good memory.
It clears that hurdle by a lot. I have to think this is probably the only thing. I think that's holding me back is it is a lot of ink for a card that doesn't necessarily do anything. Like, it's 3 to get down, 1 to move your character there, and moving that character there doesn't do anything until your opponent removes it. It's really funny with stuff that like challenges. Like if you like have a challenge deck or something, a deck that really focuses on that. Like there's a decent chance you can challenge your stuff into a situation where you trade, and then you kind of replace itself. That seems really strong. I'm gonna go with my initial gut, which is that it is strong. Like repeatable card advantage is always good. If it's not good, it's just that the cost to move there and not guaranteeing value from it is just a little bit too much.
So you're saying it's strong?
I think it's probably pretty strong.
Ding, ding, ding. This is one of the best locations in the game, and one of the best locations in Amethyst. You pretty much hit the nail on the head. Huge defense, so it's very difficult to remove. It even has a little passive lore. And in Amethyst is kind of the card draw color, and Amethyst has a lot of one-cost characters that say when they're banished, draw a card. Well, if you put them at the library, that stacks with that effect, so you actually end up drawing 2 cards. And you touched on a point, too, with the challenging aspect where you can send something like a Madam Mim Fox. You get her on the field. She's going to trade with whatever you run her into, but you move her into the library, and suddenly not only are you getting that trade, you're drawing a card off of it as well. Or you've got a board of 3 stuff. You put them all at the library. You use Be Prepared. You wipe the field. Now you draw a card for all those characters. So the library is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best locations in the game.
All right, that makes sense.
Now we'll see if you get this next one. This is our final Amethyst card, my favorite color. Go ahead and read this for us.
This is Genie, Wonderful Trickster, 7 inkable, 4/7, shift 5. Whenever you play a card, draw a card. Jesus. Forbidden Treasure. At the end of your turn, put all the cards in your hand on the bottom of your deck in any order. Oh no. Oh no, that is. Huh.
Oh, I cannot wait to talk about this one.
This is something. So again, what I said with Jafar still sits, which is a lot of text. A lot of text, usually pretty good. The first ability obviously is absurd. The scary thing here is that second ability, Forbidden Treasure, obviously is meant to be a downside. You lose your entire hand at the end of every single turn, which means that, like, if you play him out on 5, you lose your whole hand. Your next turn, you have to top deck a card to play the game, and then, like, you get to, like, play off the top of your deck effectively. I guess my first question, is there a genie that costs like 2?
Yes, there are plenty of genies for this one to shift onto. I'll say that.
Okay. Because like the one thing that like could happen with your reward awaits is, say you do the shift, you lose your whole hand. If your entire deck is just like 1 and 2 costs, he could say like draw 3 cards every single turn as long as you don't hit another copy of Genie.
True.
Which is like a really interesting build around. But that's really risky, obviously, because the moment you hit a Genie, you get really like heavily invested, and like you kind of want high curve cards in a lot of decks, right? Like that, and maybe you could have like 5 as like the cap because it's what you have to do to get Genie into play. Like, but then like if you flip that 5 and you've already done like a 1 and a 2 this turn, this card seems really cool and really really fun. And I think that if it was an Eternal game, a game that goes really, really long, usually what ends up happening is the low-cost cards on your curve get stronger and stronger over time. You could build a deck that's like nothing but 1 and 2 cost cards, and then like you could Forbidden Treasure, and then just you play this, and all of a sudden Genie reads draw 4 cards every turn. But I think this is way too risky to play, especially if you like lose your whole hand, go to your opponent's turn, and they just kill the Genie. You're in such a bad spot, I have to imagine. So I'm going to say this card is not very good.
He may be the wonderful trickster, but he did not trick you. You're correct. This card is unplayable. Nobody uses it. And every single person had the exact same reaction you did when we first read this, which was you read that first effect and you're like, oh my God, this is cracked. And then you read the second effect and you go, oh my God, this is awful. Like, I genuinely, I'm not even sure what they were trying to do. Maybe they wanted you to do something like you said with all the 1-drops, because obviously that first effect is one of the most insane effects on any card. But then it's just ruined by the second effect where, okay, all that value now is just thrown away. So, yeah, too much to ask for, never sees play.
Makes sense. Seems like a really fun build around, especially if, like I said, if the game, like the Eternal format, what do they call it? Like Infinity format?
Yeah, you
Like,
made a
I
good
could see
point.
it
If the one
eventually
drops
being
get
in
big
there.
enough, maybe you can do something where you just top deck and you're just constantly playing off the top like that. All right, moving on to Emerald, our first Emerald card. This is Diablo, the Devoted Herald. He is a 3-cost uninkable, 2/2 stat line. Shift, discard an action card. He's evasive, he has 1 lore, and he says, circle far and wide. During each opponent's turn, whenever they draw a card while this character is exerted, you may draw a card. What do you think?
Okay, so whenever they draw a card, that includes for their like draw for turn, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'm guessing there's like a 1 or a 2-cost Diablo as well, if that shift is relevant, because there doesn't seem to be a reason for the shift on a 3-cost card otherwise.
Right. Yes, there are small Diablos he can shift onto.
This reads absurd to me. Effectively, if you're a Magic player, I know this because of Commander. This is almost like a Ristic Study or like a what is it? The treasure one that like you every time your opponent draws, they pay.
Yeah,
or they don't
I
pay.
don't remember
you
what it's called, but I know
token.
what you're thinking of.
Like this seems the same type of effect. Your opponent draws, but like also if they have to draw because they draw for their draw on each turn, which means the Diablo is going to replace himself as long as he can do it. Why is he evasive? Like this is like that's such an annoying thing to have as well. This has to be strong. Like especially you can get this out as early as probably turn 1 or 2, or I guess turn 2. If there's a 1-cost Diablo, you could like shift it into this. I assume you can then quest because it's considered the same character. It wouldn't be something
Correct.
sick anymore.
Correct.
So like as early as turn 2, you have a floodgate that says when your opponent draws, you draw. That seems really strong. So this card has to be absurdly good.
All right. You nailed it. Not only is it absurdly good, you could argue this is the best card in Disney Lorcana. And it has been asked, so many people have asked for this to be banned. It has won 4 of the DLCs that we had last season. It's just absolutely absurd. So there is a 1-drop Diablo that scouts your opponent's hand. It lets you see their entire hand. You then shift him on top of that on turn 2. You can immediately sing, you can challenge, you can quest. And now, when they draw for turn, you draw a card. And any other draw, because they have to get rid of this guy. Because they don't get rid of him, he's guaranteed drawing 1 a turn. So sometimes, though, to get rid of him, they have to draw for an answer, which means you're feeding him, and he then draws you even more. So, like, if someone plays Whole New World against you while Diablo is exerted, not only do you draw 7, you can draw an additional 7 if you wish for each card they drew.
Oh, it's a May.
Yeah.
It's not even mandatory.
It's
You
optional.
can't try to like. I'm gonna mill them out by like Whole New Worlding while Diablo's on field. I'll get them. Yeah. Why?
Exactly. And because so you remember the Bucky card, you know that one. The most powerful deck then, what people do is the Baby Diablo 1, drop Bucky on 2, shift this guy, doesn't cost ink. He's a Floodborn, he triggers Bucky, now they discard, now Diablo sings another discard spell, and then he refills your hand. Card is absolutely insane. I don't know what they were thinking when they were printed this.
Not only that, you get to have multiples and play at the same time, even, which I imagine it just gets more ridiculous. Like card advantage, building more card advantage. I mean, again, I know a little bit of Magic's history, and like one of the most powerful cards in Magic for a long time was Bob, which is, at the beginning of your turn, once per turn, reveal the top card of your deck, add the card to the hand, take damage equal to its mana cost. This is just Bob on crack.
Yeah. And like you said, it's evasive, so the majority of the cast can't challenge it. Nearly every deck in the game, Ghoul, has Diablo tech, has slots that, well, in case I run into Diablo, I need something that can answer it. So it's one of the most insane cards in the game. Yeah, it's he's a menace.
What were they thinking?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
But did they playtest this?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Many of us have wondered that, so yeah, he's cracked. So moving on to something we'll see if he is as cracked. Go ahead and read this for me.
This is Clarabelle, Light on Her Hooves. This is a 7-cost inkable 5/6. Quest for 2 lore, shift 5. End of your turn. If chosen opponent has more cards in hand than you may draw cards until you have the same number. Okay.
And since I'm showing you the enchanted art, this is a legendary, just for reference.
Yep. Okay. So this is a really interesting card because it could be a really, really strong source of card advantage. Again, if we talk about like remember I talked about the Genie. If you have a card deck with a lot of low cost cards, you can theoretically get your hand kind of low each turn. Clarabelle says, "Hey, you have a pretty low hand. Your opponent has a bunch of cards in hand because they are not playing 1 or 2 cost. Why don't you just go ahead and draw 5?" Like that seems like really fun. The things that are keeping me off of this, it's really expensive, which would kind of go against that deck a little bit. It is inkable, which is nice. That always helps. And if I remember correctly, Emerald was kind of like the black in Magic. It's very heavy on it has like the discard effects in the game as well. And that's a bit of a nombo. If you're discarding your opponent's hand
True.
and then you play Clarabelle, which means that like you might be either not running the discard effects in an Emerald deck that's playing Clarabelle, or you kind of like just live with the fact that when you discard from your opponent, you're also kind of discarding from yourself in a way. Like that's a bit weird. It is a really fun effect. It's really interesting. I could see it being like a good card advantage engine in a deck that's like Emerald X, but the X is the more important like color. I don't know if that happens very often, where it's like, well, I'm mostly like an Amber deck, but like because I might as well be in Emerald to run Diablo or something, like I'm gonna run some Clarabelles as well. I could maybe see that happening, but I think just like based on what she does with the color identity and the cost of the card, I'm gonna say that she's okay, but probably doesn't see a lot of play.
All right, that is a pretty fair assessment. I would say she's very good, but only when you build around her. Kind of similar to Jafar, and she really only goes in one color, her most dominant color, which is green-blue. And the reason that works is because what you do is blue lets you ramp, right? So you ramp, and usually the way you ramp is you're getting extra cards out of your hand. So, okay, I can ink an extra card a turn. So you ramp out, empty your hand, drop her, and then she fills your hand up because they have like 5 cards still, and you emptied your hand. So she works very well in that color combination. But you are also correct that you can't really run her with discard. Some people have tried. It's like, because again, then they don't have any cards to refill off of. And she's just not quite generic enough that you can just jam her into any green deck. She does have good stats, but if you can build around her, she works very well in that Emerald Sapphire deck. But beyond that, she's not good enough to just jam anywhere.
Is the shift relevant on this one?
It is. It is. So similar to those
her?
ramp decks, there's a 1-cost Clarabelle. They'll put her out, just kind of leave her around, don't even like quest with her, and then they'll ramp the next 3 turns, and then just boom, shift her on 5. The nice thing that makes her work is it happens at the end of your own turn, so it's not like she has to stick around to get that effect. It's just immediately, boom, I get to refill my hand up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's even a bit of removal in green, which says basically take anything on your opponent's board, tuck it into their deck, but then they draw 2 cards, which normally is a downside. But with Clarabelle, it says, well, actually, I just filled your hand up some more, so I'll draw an additional 2 cards with you as well. So, yeah, she definitely has her combos, but outside of that, she doesn't see a ton of play. Moving on, in Emerald, we have Prince John, a 3-cost uninkable 1/2 stat line, the greediest of all, has the ward keyword, and I sentence you. Whenever your opponent discards 1 or more cards, you may draw a card for each card discarded. 2 lore. What do you think?
This is very interesting. So, ward obviously seems very strong. I will say that the 2 lore is kind of weird because they can still challenge them, and I don't think the stat line reads very well for a 3-cost, especially an uninkable 3-cost. The effect, though, is that is a very strong line of text. The big questions there are, how often can you get them to discard? And is it worth going so heavily into discard that you play this? I think of Final Fantasy TCG has this on a backup in Where and it's a card that has seen a little bit of experimentation, but it's also on a card type that is very difficult to remove and interact with, and it really hasn't seen a ton of play. So the question then is, does Lorcana, is this safe enough to commit to the field on 3, and then is there a way to consistently get a discard on 4, or 2 discards on 4? It is a 2-card combo. It does do very well if you can line that up.
enjoying this.
This is the kind of card you would put in there to trick me as well. Like, I know
Also
you
true.
know that I hate playing against discard in Final Fantasy. And you're like, I'm going to get this because Ghoul is going to have PTSD over
Very
discard.
true, very true.
Again, my Yu-Gi-Oh brain as well says that, like, so if people that aren't familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh, in Yu-Gi-Oh, discard is like one of the rarest things in the game. They just do not print discard effects in Yu-Gi-Oh at all. They learned very early that discard in Yu-Gi-Oh does not work. Which makes it very funny when they do print discard and people go, why do they print this? And then they ban it like 2 years later and you're like, what did you think was going to happen when you printed discard? But like a lot of card games, it's just like a part of the game. I think this is probably a few too many hoops to jump through. I think the card reads okay, but you play it on 3. It's probably pretty hard to get the discard the turn you play it. The stats are not great. The word is nice, but like it prevents it from being anything other than challenged, and the body size is so small that it means that like having the lore on it doesn't really do very much. And I think that like just needing to find the discard to pair with it might just be a little bit too much to ask for. You can get your card advantage somewhere else, maybe.
So not very good?
I think it's not very good. I could very well be wrong on this.
This is one of the most commonly cards asked to be banned, because this card is insane. And
I could have also seen that happening as well.
to be fair, a lot of it depends around the surrounding cast he has in the package. So Diablo, for example, is always paired with this card. And there's a 2-cost song you can sing called Sudden Chill, and it just says they discard a card. So Diablo's on the field, you drop Prince John, Diablo sings Sudden Chill, they discard, Prince John draws for that, and then Diablo's going to immediately draw on his turn. It also triggers every time they discard, so if you play this in the Steel package and you've used Whole New World, you actually draw for every card they were forced to discard with Whole New World, so you just get this insane hand size. Lorcana has done this weird thing that Final Fantasy didn't do. In Final Fantasy, Ice had awful card draw. It was discard, but that was it. Whereas Lorcana, for some reason, they have all these effects that not only can you discard, they draw a bunch of cards, so you have nothing while they have everything. And in particular, the ward is what makes him such a... There's so few things in Lorcana, as you kind of remember the removal being very overcosted, that actually deals with a warded character. So this character just sits there, and then once they've picked your hand to pieces, then he quests for 2 lore, so it actually makes it pretty easy for them to get to their win condition at that point. So yeah, he's absolutely cracked, and people constantly call for this card to be banned.
That makes sense. The other thing that I was thinking was, like, I thought he'd be competing more with Diablo for, like, what you're doing space. But I always, again, singing makes sense. I didn't realize there was a song you could sing with Diablo
Yeah, you wouldn't have done that.
You know, allows you to combine, like, okay, you discard, I draw, Diablo, I draw. You kind of have the makings of a very obnoxious discard control deck.
Yep.
So that makes a lot of sense.
I think that's going to be it for Emerald, so let's move on to Ruby. Go ahead. Who do we got here?
This is Goofy, Super Goof. 4-cost Inkable, 2/4. Rush can challenge the turn they're played, and Super Peanut powers when it challenges another character, gain 2 lore. Did not expect this to be a legendary. When I was first reading
he's
it.
not. I think he's technically like a rare or a super rare, but sometimes they make enchanteds out of the lesser cards. It's just if they find art they like.
Gotcha. So there's a lot of interesting utility here. I like inkability on cards. I really just would feel like I would value quite a bit because it makes your draws and your consistency so much easier. Rush seems like it's nice because it allows the card to kind of double as a removal spell. That's something that if Lorcana really struggles with, you could put a premium on that type of effect, I feel like. And 2 also would kill... Oh, no, you can't challenge because you can only Diablo with evasive. So that doesn't deal with the best card in the game, man. That's a little annoying. But, like, the 2/4... It's not like... The 2 doesn't seem like it's super great at removal. But, like, I feel like you could pick off something small and then gain 2 lore and feel pretty good about that, right? Like, if your opponent, like, quests with... Even if they quest with, have a Lilo or something. You could play Super Goof, punch the Lilo, gain 2 lore. The Lilo's back in the graveyard, and it's like, well, you're gonna play her again. I'll play Goofy again. Like Goofy will punch her in the face again, and that doesn't seem that bad. The big thing that's kind of tripping me up is how often is your opponent going to have something to consistently challenge? If you don't have something to challenge, this card reads terrible to me. Like it's like pretty low, pretty bad stats. Only quest for 1 lore. Can't quest the turn it's played. It can only challenge the turn it's played. But like people have to play stuff, right? So like that's the whole point of the game is to put things on the field and try to win the game by. I'm gonna lean probably not great. It's just again, it's just a little too situational, and the stats just seem a little bit too low for what this is trying to do for me to really think it's a like super staple card.
He says, not great. I think that is a fair assessment. This card is actually good, and it does see play in a very specific list. You are correct that the stats are pretty low for a 4 cost. In particular, and you tapped into the Lilo thing, this is one of those cards that punishes a Lilo if he keeps coming back. But unless they have really low stats like a Daisy, he's not going to take it out. Now, the nice thing is he gets the lore regardless, just for challenging. He doesn't actually have to finish it off. But then it's kind of easy to crack back on the super goof, so most likely you're only going to get 2 lore out of him before he goes. However, there are certain lists that they call them like lore burn lists, which is anything that gives me instant lore the turn I play it, I'm into. So he finds a good home there. So he's solid, and again, he works well in those lists, but you are correct that he's not just, hey, he's so generic you put him in any Ruby deck, because his stats are pretty low.
Does Lorcana have a sideboard or a side deck?
Not currently.
Not currently. I would say this seems like a card that'd be great in a side deck as
Yeah.
well. Like if your opponent is on like the Lilos or something, then you say, okay, I know I need removal for little things, and you know, Goofy's a great way of kind of just being that removal. And again, removal is at a premium in the game, from what I understand. So I can see it being a very good side deck card. But there'll be matchups you'll have this card, and you'll look at your opponent's like big 6/7s and go,
right.
All right.
yeah. And the only, again, if you're like 2 lore away from winning, he's great because he just goes, hey, surprise, I get the 2 lore. But obviously beyond that, it's just so. Let's see what you think of this next one. This is Maui, Half Shark, 6 cost, inkable, 7/5 stat line, evasive, first ability, Chee-hoo! Whenever this character challenges another character, you may return an action card from your discard to your hand. Ability 2, Wayfinding. Whenever you play an action, gain 1 lore, quest for 1 lore. What do you think of the Half Shark?
So once again, Inkable's nice. Especially, again, I imagine the higher the cost of the bet, the more the Inkable is really going to matter. Especially if you're playing against something like an aggro deck. Being able to have an extra utility for a card that isn't just going to sit in your hand for 6 turns and rot is definitely nice. The challenge seems like a pretty good source of card advantage. It seems really obnoxious depending on the quality of action cards in the game. And I don't think we've even looked at any so far in this little review that we have. So the question here is, how obnoxious is it to loop one of those action cards over and over again? Are songs considered to be action cards by any chance?
So every song is automatically an action, but not every action is a song, if that makes sense. But if it's a song,
so
it's automatically an action.
Seems absurd. That does not seem like something you should be allowed to do, for what I've seen of the song effects. He is 6, and he has to be able to challenge to get the card back. If the opponent just does not have a field or like doesn't, you can't challenge if they're not tapped as well, right? Which
correct, yeah, you can only challenge exerted characters.
So because you can't challenge, he seems like you could kind of play around him a little bit. Like you see your opponent play him, he can't challenge the turn you play him. They see this, they're gonna say, well, I could gain 3 lore, but I'm not going to give you back a whole new world or, you know, whatever, the card that you need to win the game. If your opponent isn't able to do that, the thing they want to do because you do that, like, that's good for you, but not as good as you just doing the thing. It's not like when you play Maui or when Maui becomes exerted, pick up a card. That's, this is really weird. There's like, again, it is really that combination of like, the effect seems absurdly good. Like, and I don't know that you should be allowed to pick up the best action card in your graveyard every single turn. But I wonder if like requiring it to be on a challenge is enough of a hoop to jump through that you just can't consistently get that. Because you don't when you hit a location, you're not. Are you challenging a location when you hit a location?
Yes, you technically are challenging it.
You are challenging when you hit a location. That actually does change things then, because then your opponent has something in play potentially that is always challengeable.
Although keep in mind, he only gets the effect if he challenges a character. So if he hits
Oh, a character. So that also okay. Never mind then. I'm going to say that he probably can be played around enough to where I don't think he is super strong. Unless there's a way of like giving him rush consistently or something, because then you could play him, get back the action. He probably doesn't have a way of dealing with it. But I think being on 6, not having shift to get to cheat him into play early, and having an additional hoop to jump through to get the action card back, your opponent can just say, "Well, I'm not going to do anything that gives you a target." So I'm going to say this card is probably not very good.
You should have listened to your resource. This card is insane. This is one of the best cards in the game, and you hit it on the head when you said being able to loop the best card in your deck is insane, and it is insane. So the problem with this card, what makes it so insane, is it's not only a removal piece, because it hits for 7. It's going to take anything out. It's
going to kill anything it hits.
It's a win condition. So when you play that action, you're also gaining lore. So not only are you removing their threats, you're getting cards back that... So you play a card that says, hey, pay 3, draw a card. Oh, but also now it gains me 1 lore. Hey, I cast this Brawl, which knocked your character out. Also, now I gain a lore. And it has this hidden text where it actually essentially freezes your opponent's characters because people can't afford to quest in front of this. So you're absolutely right. They'll sit there and be like, well, I'm not going to quest then. And he goes, okay, well, I'll quest myself. And also every action I play while I'm on the board, I'm gaining lore myself. So I'm going to win. So now you're forced to quest to try to catch up to me. And then I punish you. And I get back just these absurd actions that you would want to play anyway or sing anyway. And now they have lore attached to him. Like, Andy's evasive, so you can't even challenge him for the most part. Like, and his 7/5 stat line, there's just so few cards that actually deal with that in the game, especially on an evasive. Like, he just has so much text and so many lines. Like, this card he's a menace. I absolutely hate playing against this card.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think probably underrated the evasive. I more so that he could take out an evasive card. So they couldn't just like have an evasive thing and say, well, this guy would be really annoying. Good thing you can't challenge my thing.
Yeah,
but
I think that's what they intended for it, was that, it's so he can hit an evasive, but in return it makes it so like, okay, but now I can't hit him back, so he just sits there going, I win the game. Like, I've seen people go from 12 to 20 lore, literally with just 2 sharks sitting on the field, like, yep, that gains me 2, that action now gains me 2, that gains me 2. Just like, all right, cool, I'll just sit here and do nothing. That's fun for you.
I was definitely also underrating the wave fighting ability. That wasn't something that I really factored in because I felt like the card advantage engine was just kind of more important.
Yeah, it doesn't read super strong, but when you see it in practice, you're like, oh my god, this is awful. Like, what is going on?
Fair enough.
All right, one more Ruby for you. Go ahead and read Sisu for us.
Is Sisu, Empowered Sibling, is 8 ink, 5/4 with 3 lore, shift 6. When you play this character, banish all opposing characters with 2 power or less. So that hits a lot, is my first initial impression. There are a lot of really powerful 2 power or less characters, for sure. I kind of wonder how much that matters at the end of the day, because like she's not coming down until 6. If you could ramp into this, like, it would be a pretty good way of stabilizing. Like, I can see this, like, again, being in, like, a Ruby Sapphire deck. You go, like, a Sisu on 4, but, like, it's only, like, turn 3 for you because you're in Sapphire, and then you ramp on 5, and then you shift on 6, and now you've stabilized because you have this big body that kills all your opponent's stuff, and now you're ramped ahead of them. Like, that seems like it could be good, but, like, I feel like almost without ramp, like, is 6 enough to actually have this effect matter? Like, even if you shift into this, can aggro kill you before 6 anyway? Like, is she too late at that point? And then, at that point... And she doesn't have any other text. Like, it has to be the removal effect that's good, because the body size seems just okay, and, like, 3 lore is nice, but, like, I feel like for 8 cost, they could print 5 lore on the card. It probably wouldn't change the playability that much. Again, this is one of those cards that if there was a side deck or a sideboard, I could see it being really important because, you say, okay, I know I'm going to get to deck with a bunch of, like, a mid-range deck and all their stuff is tiny, so I'm going to, like, put this in, but, like, if it doesn't, it's one-sided, which is good as well. Like, that could matter. This There's just so many different layers on this that like
I've tried to pick cards.
it's a really
this time
simple
to
card.
really get you thinking. So
Yeah, no, there's a lot like there's so many like situations and so much context that could matter. I can see this being a card that also is good in some formats and bad in other formats. Again, if if everybody's playing Diablo and Prince John and all this other stuff, like this says get the heck off of the field for those cards. But like maybe those cards like fall out of favor, or like the metagame for a specific tournament is all a bunch of like exactly 3 power stuff, and you go, cool, this Sisu that I can't ink is just rotting in my hand and there's nothing I can do with her. Like, that would feel terrible. I think probably just given the quality of like Prince John and Diablo, you probably have to run this card if you're in Ruby, but you probably aren't very happy about it outside of when she exactly wipes the field against those. So I'm going to say that she sees play, she's good, but there are times you wish this was any other card in your entire deck.
I'd say that's a pretty accurate assessment, although leaning more towards she's actually very good. As we touched, Prince John is the perfect example. Right? He has Ward, so this is one of those few cards that can actually just knock him out. And then, because it's one-sided, and there are some decks, this will just wipe their board and then leaves you with a 3-lore quester. And you can get to 20 pretty quick when you've got a 3-lore going sideways every turn. There is one deck in particular that makes her seem completely unbalanced and broken, and that she needs to be banned, and that'll become clear when I show you a card here in a little bit. But so overall, she is very good. You can't quite afford to play her in every Ruby deck because she's also expensive. So you also touched on it that Ruby Sapphire is the most common home for her. But yeah, so she's very good, very strong. There are a few times, like you said, we're like, it's the wrong matchup. This just doesn't do anything. But overall, she sees a lot of play, and that will become clearer too in a card I'm going to show you in a bit.
Alrighty.
Moving on to Sapphire, we have Mufasa, He Lives in You. This is an 8-cost, uninkable. This is our enchanted version, Ruler of Pride Rock. He is a 4/9, a delicate balance. When you play this character, exert all cards in your inkwell, then return 2 cards at random from your inkwell to your hand. Quest for 4 lore with everything the light touches. Whenever this character quests, ready all cards in your inkwell. What do you think, Ghoul?
This is a very weird card. Is my initial.
Don't you love
I
that
like
card,
that actually.
though?
I like that. Like it seems like Lorcana seems like. I remember the first couple sets, the cards seemed very kind of safe and stock standard a lot of the time. I'm happy to see that the cards are kind of doing more interesting things.
Yeah.
So again, seeing 8, even in Sapphire, where maybe that 8 really reads more like a 6, is not ideal. That a delicate balance effect is such a weird one. Because it does mean when you play him, you're doing nothing else for the rest of the turn. Which means maybe that's not that big a deal. Maybe you just say, I'm going to play if you have, say, 10 ink, you go, okay, I'm going to play this 2-cost thing, and then I'm going to move fast, right? It just means that you have to kind of order your stuff a little more. So maybe that's not that big of a deal. It just says that, like, you can't do anything on your opponent's turn anyway. So, like, you just have to end whatever you're doing with Mufasa, basically, which really means that he kind of draws 2 cards from your inkwell without being able to play those cards that turn, which is not the biggest deal. It does mean he kind of unramps you by 2, but like you're on 8, maybe it just doesn't matter if you unramp by 2. You're like, okay, I need cards in hand more than ink at this point in the game. So that's just kind of neat. And he does also let you, like, he doubles what like your ink that's left as well if he sticks around. I think that, like, he's gonna feel bad if you play this and then immediately he just dies. Unramp by 2, and sure, like, there are probably games where you play this with no cards left in hand, and you're like, well, I lost 2 ink, but I drew 2 cards. Like, there probably would be games where that would help you, but a lot of the time that's going to feel really, really, really bad.
He's thinking.
Yeah, no, I'm deep in the tank on this one. I like the design space, honestly. It's such a neat thing. It's a very Lorcana card as well, because like a lot of games, like, you think like Magic, like return 2 lands to your hand, you go, cool, thanks, I guess, like.
Yeah.
But like in Lorcana, because those are also potentially real cards, that you could do other things with on your next turn, that actually is a real source of card advantage, just at a cost, which is like when effects are the most interesting is when it's like, this is a really powerful thing you're doing. You're drawing two, but there's a catch. I really like him. I think this card probably is... I could see him being like the kingpin or like the most important card in a big ramp deck. Like get all the ink into play and then bounce two things, and then you have all the ink you could ever want. Can you float ink? Can you go like, I have 8 ink, do this, and then ready it all and do that? No. So no floating ink.
Yeah, no floating.
Probably for the better. I've never liked that mechanic in Magic, but even still though, like doubling your ink. The only other question is like, by the time you can quest with him, you're probably close to winning the game already. Anyway, maybe this is a finisher at that point as well. I'm gonna say he's probably... I think he's probably good, but I don't think he's gonna be a meta dominant card or anything.
All right. He is a very difficult one to evaluate. Unfortunately, because I love this art, this card is bad and sees no play. And the reasoning, because I think he's just got too many situations that make him weird. So if you're against aggro, you'll either never get this off, or you need something like that Sisu, right, to just knock that board out. Because the turn you play him, like you said, it basically nothing actually happens. So he's a bit too slow for aggro, and because he's uninkable, if you get him early, he's just stuck in your hand. That being said, if he sticks around, you essentially just win the game on the spot, because you've doubled your ink for the turn, for every turn, and 4 lore is an insane amount. And unless they have something that just outright knocks him out, 9 health is insane. So there's so, like, a shark can't even take this guy out. So on the few decks that do try to run him, and they'll usually run him as just like a 1 or a 2 of, when he comes down, if he sticks around, he just wins the game on the spot, which is incredible. But unfortunately, there's just too many other pieces, I think, holding him back, which is why he doesn't see consistent play.
Yeah, I know that like Sapphire has some ways of making use of a card like this as well. Like, are there cards like exert this, put a card from your hand face down in your inkwell or something like that? Like that could help with like making it a little less awkward. It's like, okay, it's not the matchup for Mufasa. Get it out.
Yeah.
Try to find that Sisu or something that like ramp into the Sisu. That can matter a bit for a card like this. It is kind of a funny thing as well. Like I don't know how good like reanimation is. It seems like a card that like if reanimation becomes a big deal, maybe you reanimate him on 6, it doesn't cost 8 anymore, and maybe 2 bursts of 4 ink is better than having 2 bursts of 6, but like later in the game. Like it seems like a really, really obnoxious like reanimation target if that ever becomes a thing in the game.
You had a good prediction about a card in our last video about, you said, hey, if they ever add this card will get better, and they added that, and that card got better. Reanimation currently isn't really a thing in Lorcana, but you are correct that maybe if that ever pops up in the future, Mufasa is going to see more play. All right, next in Sapphire. Go ahead and read this one for me.
Is Sapphire Coil. This is a 2-cost inkable item. Brilliant Shine. Whenever cards put into your inkwell, you may give a chosen character -2 power this turn. So my initial impression is this text really doesn't do very much. It can be really annoying, I guess. Like you could say, like, I'm gonna ink this, I'm gonna like bonus ramp and ink this. This is gonna gain -2, but that only matters if you can challenge, right? Like you have to also. I'm gonna like like a combination of like a ramp plus challenge deck. Like I guess like that's kind of what Maui wanted to do earlier, but like Maui doesn't care how much power the other thing had. It looked like he was a 7/6. Like he's gonna live anything he fights anyway. Right? Like, it would be annoying. It's like, well, they're challenging me and the Maui doesn't need damage, but, like, does that really matter at the end of the day? Like, is that important enough where I'm going to, like, put my 2-drop down and be happy about this? Like, I kind of have to think it isn't. It's, like, a really weird one, because, like, I read this, I go, like, cool, you make the things slightly smaller for a turn, but not in a way that really impacts the board state. Like, if it was on their turn, like maybe it was like your turn and their turn, I'd be a little higher on it, because then maybe like it becomes a protection spell. Like you have like really obnoxious thing that like wants to quest every turn, but like it's like got a small butt or something. So it's like you want to like, okay, I'm gonna make this -2 now on its turn. You can challenge me all you want. You have a 0/3 now. Like that seems kind of like fun, but like only this turn. You can't ramp on your opponent's turn to make it like a thing. This really doesn't read very strong to me at all. You can tell me that it's going to, like, no, you don't understand. This is really big for some kind of a challenge deck, but I feel like if a card's about challenging, it's going to have enough of the stats where, like, the 2 health isn't going to matter very much. I don't think this reads very strong.
Ghoul says it's not very good. This is the first time I'm going to give you one bit of advice and then ask you to reevaluate. Think about this card with Sisu.
Okay, that's a little better. That does turn Sisu into a more consistent way of targeting the rest of the field. Still does mean that you have to run this.
Specifically in Sapphire Ruby, this card is busted. Anywhere else, it doesn't do as much, but Ruby, a lot of its removal is based on your opponent's strength. There's a 3-cost action card called Brawl, which says remove something with 2 power or less. Well, normally, like Sisu, that's very limited in what it can hit. But with Sapphire Coil, it says ink for turn. Hey, I'll brawl that thing that had 4 health. Now it's actually 2 health and it dies. This card, specifically with Ruby Sapphire, is obnoxious because no matter what you play against them, they'll go, yep, ink again. That's actually -4. Yeah, now it's dead to this thing. It's so frustrating to play against. You are correct that outside of that, like in a challenger deck, it's just kind of too slow. It doesn't really do anything for you. But specifically in Ruby Sapphire, card's insane.
That makes sense. Yeah, if it upgrades your removal, to a higher tier of removal at a pretty low cost, like the opportunity cost of playing it's pretty low, which is like a nice thing about the card. But I didn't really conceptualize it as this is the card that upgrades your removal spell from being kill their little stuff to kill all their stuff.
Exactly,
which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, but you were correct outside of that. Like outside of that, it doesn't see you play. But in that deck, oh my god, you'll hate it. So we have one more blue card, and this is do-do-do-do. Well, Tamatoa hasn't always been this glam. This is a 6-cost inkable Tamatoa, happy as a clam. 4/5, first effect, coolest collection. When you play this character, return up to 2 item cards from your discard to your hand. And I'm beautiful, baby. Whenever this character quests, you may play an item for free. Quest for 2. What do you think?
That. It's a lot of really annoying text to see on a card. Because, items seem pretty decent from what I remember. I remember there was, Lucky Coin last time, which isn't a card that, I don't know how well that would pair with Tamatoa, because that was, cheap to play and expensive to activate.
Reverse. It was expensive to play and cheap to activate.
Well, that makes this even better. But, depends on what you can get from your items. If you can get a removal spell from your items as well, I don't know if there's items do this and then put some ink into it and you just get to pop something. That would be a really annoying thing to be looping with Tamatoa. Anything that says pop this, gain 3 lore, and then you can Tamatoa pick it back up, replay it. That seems really fun. It also kind of is annoying because item removal, I remember being kind of difficult, kind of like artifacts in Magic, or, kind of spell trap removal in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a thing you have to, specifically want to run, but then having this card that says, thanks for destroying my stuff. Anyways, I'm going to pick it back up again, and then I'm going to play it for free next turn. And then, if there are 8 or 9 cost items that this could just cheat out every turn for free, which I know exists thanks to Lucky Coin, that seems really, really, really annoying, and, it makes it where not only is this Pot of Greed on play, but almost a better type of Pot of Greed if you're able to build around it, but also an ink advantage and allows you to get to your late game win conditions sooner. This has to be a pretty strong card.
He says that. I'm going to give you one bit of context too, just before you finally evaluate. There is a 1-cost item called Popsicle, which is a cantrip. You play it, you draw a card, and you can banish it at any time. Does that change your opinion?
It makes it probably even better. It means that you pretty much always have items to pick back up, and then it becomes kind of a card draw engine as well.
Yep. This card is absolutely cracked. This is another one like Diablo that when you play against it, you're like, what were they thinking? Why would they print this? So the Popsicle is the most common target. So he essentially says, play 6, draw the 2 Popsicles back you banished earlier, and so now you can just draw 2. And God help you if he survives, because as you pointed out, he quests, play Lucky Dime for free. So there's 7 cost I didn't have to pay. Or even, here's a free Sapphire Coil, here's a free whatever other 5-cost item, 3-cost item. So he has that generic text in any card game is, hey, I do something the turn I come in, and then the longer I stick around, the more value I get you as well. Or if you compare it to FF, it has not only an entry, but on attack effect. So it's just insane. Just an absolutely insane card. I don't know what they were thinking when they printed this card. It is.
I mean, it has to almost not matter what you play off of him. Again, you're almost happy to just loop 2 cards back from your discard to your hand, I have to imagine. So, like you could just probably even play a popsicle. It's like, sure, I'm saving 1 ink, but that's 1 ink I don't have to pay for the popsicle. I'm probably happy to do that.
Yeah,
so
there's some decks, they don't even run big items like the Lucky Dime. They will just run 4 popsicles just to keep card draw going off the Tamatoa.
Makes sense.
Pretty crazy. We'll move on to our final of the regular ink colors. This is Steel. Go ahead and read this one for me.
This is Pete, Games Referee. It's a 3/3. Blow the whistle. When you play this character, opponents can't play actions until the start of your next turn. I think I remember this one. Maybe I'm incorrect on it.
He wasn't in the last one, so unless you saw it somewhere else.
Maybe I did see it somewhere else. Maybe I remember reading this and thinking, why would they print this somewhere? I remember, so again, this is another one of those floodgate effects, and this is an annoying type of floodgate in Yu-Gi-Oh, which is called a lingering floodgate in Yu-Gi-Oh. It's a card that applies an effect that your opponent just cannot get rid of. They can't kill the Pete and then play an action, right? Like, it's like...
Correct, yeah.
Once the Pete is cast and resolves, your opponent just does not get to do anything for the next turn.
Correct.
And these tend to be really annoying effects when they are good. So the question here is, how relevant is your opponent not playing actions, and is 1 turn enough to stunt out and be enough, right? Like, there could be a situation where it's like, you're in an aggro deck, play this, your opponent, or a discard deck, your opponent's going to want to play like a whole new world or something. You could play a Pete, they get stuck with cards in their hand further, you keep discarding, and then they have to discard their whole new world. They don't get to refill their hand, they just kind of lose the game as they slowly bleed out. The thing that's kind of tripping me up is I don't know how relevant actions always are going to be. You have songs are always... I mean, I know songs are very strong, obviously, and being able to even stop them from singing is, assuming that the singing is a type of play.
Correct, yeah. It'll stop all songs as well.
But again, it's just the 1 turn. The body isn't anything absurdly good, and it's only 1 lore. I think it's a little too narrow. This is one of those cards that if there was a side deck, it would be crazy strong. I could also see this being really good in some kind of Eternal format where maybe songs become much more important over time, or even better. I can also see it even getting worse in Eternal formats where like maybe it just becomes all about characters. Kind of a card to keep an eye on, because there probably is a time and place where this card is playable and very good in a specific room. But I have to imagine that like it's just a little too narrow for what it does. Your opponent just might not want to play an action anyway.
A fair assessment. So you are correct. There is a time and place for this card to be playable, and that time is since it's been printed in every single day of Lorcana. This is one of the strongest cards in the game. It's absolutely insane, and it's unfair, and it shouldn't have been printed. With very few exceptions, nearly every deck relies on actions for most of its removal, or some of even its card draw. And so many decks will go like, I'm going to flood the board. The only way out of this is for you to use Be Prepared on me. Drop Pete. Yeah, you can't do it. And then some decks have the ability to bounce their character, and they do what they call the repeat, and they'll just play the Pete again, or they'll play the next Pete. And in a game where there's no interaction on your opponent's turn, because again, there's no counter spell for you to be like, well, before the Pete comes in, do this. When they decide to play Pete, there is nothing you can do about it. And while his stats aren't insane, he's actually on curve for a 3-cost. A 3-cost 3/3 is very common, so it's not like he's even some understated body. He can challenge, he can quest, he can sing a song the next turn. Like, it's so frustrating. There are so many games I will lose where it's like, okay, I've got the B prep in hand. Pete, you can't use it, and I just sit there and die. So absolutely abhor this card. I think a lot of folks do, and he's a 4 of in any deck that runs Steel.
That makes sense. Yeah, like I said, the thing about lingering floodgates like this is because you can't interact with them, they're very, very oppressive when they're good.
Yes. Yeah. If there was interaction, if I could counterspell, if I can on the stack Amaterasu, something like that, I don't think he would be as problematic. But because in Lorcana, you cannot do anything when your opponent Petes you, and it's a very frustrating feeling. All right, so after Pete, we will move on to our next Steel card, and this is Bagheera. He is a 5-cost 4/3 Guardian Jaguar. He has the Bodyguard text, which means he may enter play exerted. Opposing characters who challenges one of your characters, they must challenge the Bodyguard if able. Quest for 2 lore, and the ability, You've Got to Be Brave. During an opponent's turn, when this character is banished, deal 2 damage to each opposing character. What do you think?
This is a pretty neat design, actually. I like the idea of like the clear intention of the card is you play this with Bodyguard, you protect your other stuff, and then your opponent has to kill this because if they don't, they can't deal with the rest of your board by challenging, and you get to quest with your little weenies that have a bunch of lore. But when they do this, you kind of get a mini board wipe out of it, which is like it's a neat concept. Once again, though, this does have a bit of a problem, which is that your opponent kind of gets to choose when You've Got to Be Brave goes off. If it's really bad for them to do so, they might just say, you know what, keep your board. I'm going to try to kill you with lore instead. He does have a pretty big like attack, like the four, like he probably is a decent little challenger. I think 4-3 for 5 is not terrible. So like if you want to use him, protect your stuff for a turn, they say, actually, I'm just going to try to quest instead and race you. You could probably just run Bagheera into their stuff and maybe be okay with that. And if your opponent does go for like a Be Prepared or something, it does. Is Be Prepared reciprocal? Does it wipe both sides of the field?
Yes, it clears the entire field.
So like I was thinking, like maybe like a Be Prepared, like it would like wipe their field too, and like it doesn't. But if Be Prepared is just a Wrath of God or a Dark Hole, then like that doesn't really matter as much there. I think the fact that like targeted removal is not super common in the game means that this is probably pretty decent protection combined with like a pretty good side benefit to being protected. I'm gonna say this card is. I'm gonna say solid. I'm a little bit scared that if it's not good, it's just because your opponent does not ever have to kill it on their turn.
All right, he says solid. So this card sees no play. Nobody uses it. And it's one of the few cards that I'm not 100% sure why. Because as you surmised, he reads really well, right? He protects your stuff. But no one plays this card, so I don't know. The only thing I can guess is kind of what you said, that if they're the problem is if they're ahead of you, you kind of have to use Bagheera to challenge, but if he dies on your turn, he doesn't get his big board effect. And if that's if they're ahead. If you're ahead, you're already winning anyway, and he's kind of just like a win more at that point. Like, well, you couldn't even deal with my stuff as is. So that's my only guess, but I'm genuinely not sure because I personally like this card. I've tested him a few times, and it's just one of those weird cards. It's like, yeah, with all this text, you think he'd be better, but I don't know. People just don't pick him.
Yeah, I do. I can see the idea where it's like, yeah, if you're ahead, he doesn't really change the math. Your opponent's still just going to try to kill your whole field anyway. If they lose their field and they're behind, big whoop, right?
Yeah.
But maybe if you're behind, he doesn't actually do anything because they can just say, cool, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and he doesn't actually change the math.
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't say, like, your opponent must challenge this card if they can, or something like that, which I think would make the card a lot stronger, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, so maybe that's why, which is hopefully he'll show up at some point because I really like the card, but not right now. All right, let's see about this next steel card. This is... Go ahead.
It is Beyond the Horizon. It's a 7-cost uninkable song. Sing together 7. So any number of your teammates' characters with total cost 7 or more may tap to sing this for free. Is that for like a 2v2 teammates? Like if you play 2v2, can you tap your teammates' cards to do that?
Technically, so if you notice, every single Lorcana card says like your opponents or number of players, because technically Lorcana can be played multiplayer. But yeah, if you did a team mode, like they have these co-op kind of boss battle modes where you take on Jafar and you take on Ursula. So you and your teammates could combine your characters to sing this if you wanted to.
It's kind of fun. Definitely would change the viability of a card like this. If it's 7 cost, you can use your teammates' stuff to do it with you. That could be kind of fun. Choose any number of players. They discard their hands and draw 3 cards each. So this card's really kind of interesting because there's kind of 2 different modes I could see this card being used for. One of them is, this is the last card in your hand, and you say, I'm going to target myself. I'm going to discard my whole hand. I'm going to draw 3 cards. And I don't think 7 ink draw 3 is amazing. That sounds very expensive for what it is. But, like, if it's the last card in your hand, you're probably pretty happy to do, right? Like, that seems not great and not terrible. The other thing is, like, maybe you're against that Emerald player and their little bird has drawn them 8 million cards in hand. Is there a hand size limit in Lorcana?
No,
like, you have to discard
no
hand size
size.
at the turn? And maybe this is a way of saying, you know what? get rid of it, go down to 3 cards, and I'll deal with what's left, right? And that card is less powerful because of how late it happens. There's a pretty decent chance by the time you can play this, I feel like your opponent might be down to 2 cards in hand anyway, and to my knowledge, Lorcana has no cards that, like, tutor, right? There's no cards that say, I'm going to pick up my deck and I'm going to search for a card named Stitch and put it in my hand. Or
not really.
Pick up my hand, I'm going to find a Jungle Book card, right?
Correct. There's one very specific Merlin that can, but it's like you have to jump through so many hoops, it's really not even worth it. So no, they don't.
Yeah, so it's not like you can even use this as like a late disruption where it's like my opponent goes, I'm going to search my deck and I'm going to find Be Prepared. I'm going to put it in my hand and I don't have the ink to cast it this turn, so you got 1 turn, bucko, get ready. And you go, actually, discard your hand, draw 3, and that way I don't get Be Prepared. Like, so that not being in the game means that, like, you don't really know when your opponent has the disruption for it. I think this card probably is going to come online a little bit too late. The only thing that is tripping me up a little bit is I think it's possible that, like, some kind of an aggro deck could just, like, vomit a bunch of, like a 2, a 3, and a, you know, like 2 2s and a 3 onto the field. Their whole hand is empty, and they just go, exert all 3. I have no cards left in hand anyway. I'm going to draw 3, and I'm going to have a bunch of cheap stuff to play again. Like, I could see that being possible, but I feel like any situation you could do that, you could almost a whole new world instead anyway, and you're probably competing with that for deck space.
Final verdict is?
Final verdict.
So sorry, were you saying it's just kind of mid, or I wasn't quite sure what you were saying.
I don't think this card is very good, because I think that, like, any situation where it's great, you probably would a whole new world anyway, but it's neat.
It is neat. It's also cracked. This card is very busted. And your TCG experience served you well because you are correct. If you pay 7 for this, it's not very good. 7 to draw 3, not so great. However, there are a lot of characters who have Singer in the game. You can play this card as early as turn 3.
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of, like, cheap Singers. Again, you can kind of empty your hand and then immediately refuel things.
One of the most powerful decks in the game that runs Ariel and Whole New World has a 1-cost Singer that sings for 3, then a 2-cost Singer that sings for 4, and so turn 3 you can immediately just turn them sideways, junk your opponent's entire hand, say, hey, whatever your plan was, yeah, it's gone now. And then if you need to use it on yourself, and that's the crazy part too, is that it's very versatile, so you don't have to, it's unlike Whole New World, which always hits both. You can just use it on yourself, you can just use it on them, you could use it on both, whatever benefits you the most. So in that Singer deck, it's absolutely cracked and it's obnoxious. If you have to pay a hard 7 for this, which is kind of most of the songs in the game, like, if you actually have to pay their cost, imagine that if you have to pay the cost on the card. You know that from other games. It's actually kind of fair, but when you get to cheat it for free, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd kind of forgotten that cards like, I think it was Ariel, is like one of the classic Singer cards in the game, like digs for a song and then does that.
Yeah. And she sings 5, even though she costs 3, so she can. So with her and any other 2-cost character, you can already fire this off, which is crazy.
Yeah. So then the issue just becomes emptying your hand quickly enough to do this, which probably for some decks, especially like I think it like Blue has a lot of cards that, like, just put cards from your hand into your ink, so then you're also kind of ramping yourself, and you have things to do with it, and then maybe even the 7 doesn't cost that much. That makes sense. Yeah. Like I said, it's a very powerful effect, just very expensive if you can't sing it.
Yeah. No, and again, you clued into that yeah, you got to pay for this. It's not very good. But when you get it for free, it turns out when you don't have to pay 7, that's pretty good. All right, I have a surprise for you. Those were all the 6 ink colors, but I got a brand new color for you. Behold, a dual ink card. This is our first dual ink card. This is Taka, the Elemental Terror. This is a Ruby Amethyst card. It is a 10-cost inkable card, 12/12 stat line, quest for 3, can be shift 7, and has the effect Ancient Rage. During your turn, whenever an opposing character is exerted, banish them. What do you think?
Okay, so my first question is, how does the multi, like, you just have to be playing red purple to make this
Correct.
work. Like
The way
if you're not
dual
playing
links
red
work,
purple, this card can't be in your deck.
right. So the way dual inks work is that if it's in this case red purple, this can only go in a red purple deck. You can't do like red blue and then it technically still has red. It must be red purple. So it has to be in the deck with the 2 colors on it.
Okay. So that's immediately really restrictive, which doesn't necessarily mean much for the card itself. It means that these cards probably have to be really, really good, especially if they're in an unpopular like color combination. Like I think Ruby Amethyst is like one of the most popular color combinations. Those cards could be probably pretty average and still be considered, but
my personal
maybe
favorite
this
deck.
could be
yeah.
maybe this could be like an element, like a color combination that's really bad, and it might not see play even if the card itself is really strong, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about. 10 cost is a lot. And it is inkable, which is nice. It kind of gives you something else to do with an expensive card like this. The body size is hilarious. They might as well just print 2020 on it. Like, who cares at that point? Shift 7 is... like, getting this into play early really matters, but, like, man, 7 is still a lot of ink. Even for a shift. And you're also probably like, I imagine the lowest cost to Ka is still like a 5 or a 6.
I think you're correct. Yeah, I think a 5 might be the lowest cost, but it does have shift targets so that you can shift this in on 7. I'll say that.
That effect is really strong. But if I'm paying 10 to get this into play, I kind of want it to work on both players' turns. Like if you quest, banish the card that's quested until you kill this thing. Would be like the dream. Now maybe that's too oppressive and that would be a really obnoxious. Again, this is kind of in Yu-Gi-Oh! We would call this a floodgate. It's a card that like when something happens, they do it. Mm-hmm. The problem with this as a floodgate is the floodgate only applies during your turn. Now there is some cute stuff. Like maybe there's like a lot of like cheap spells that like cantrip that like exert a character opponent controls and then draw a card to replace itself, and then like all of a sudden now Taka is like this card that normally would be like a really underwhelming effect of just like exert their thing, draw a card for like 1, is now blow their thing up and draw a card, which would be like a really powerful, because again we talked about how it sounds like removal is very non-prominent in Lorcana in general. It really is just kind of that big 10 in the corner that's like, is it worth jumping through all the hoops to get this into play? Because like there are going to be a lot of games where this doesn't. My brain also goes to like maybe that if they print a really strong reanimation spell, this card becomes crazy as like one of the biggest, baddest things to cheat into play. Like you just like do a bunch of cards that like draw, discard, and then like on 5 you get this into play, and I imagine that like it would be absurd at that point. I think the fact it's only on your turn probably means that it's too much of a build around to be worth building into. Because I think you have to, like, for this card to be good, there probably have to be a lot of effects that tap your opponent's stuff on your turn. And I don't know how prevalent those are in these colors. And then, like, those cards can be really bad if this isn't in play. So I'm going to say this card's probably really powerful, but not worth the cost to actually play, so probably not very good overall.
So I'm going to lock you in on that, but I want your opinion on something. Because you are correct about Ancient Rage. However, what if it said instead, during your turn, if there is an opposing character that is exerted, banish them? So not that they have to become exerted on your turn, just if they're exerted, they're gone.
Like that would turn it into like a board wipe when it comes into play then?
Essentially. And let's say, and that would mean, like, let's say they quest on their turn and it comes to you, she immediately checks, oh, you're exerted, you're gone, and she just banishes it.
That would be a lot better. That would be... because, again, that would put it back in that mode where I was talking about, where it's like, if they quest on their turn, they are effectively saying, I am sacrificing this to gain the lore on the card and nothing else.
Yeah.
And that would be a much more difficult thing to play around. But, like, as is... you can kind of play around her more than your opponent. You probably would like your opponent to be able to for your big 10 cost bomb that needs to win the game on the spot.
Yeah. All right. I just wanted to get that out. So when I first read this card, I thought that's how it worked because it just says whenever they're exerted. And so I was like, oh, if they're just exerted, you can literally shift it on 7 and it's like be prepared with a body. It just blows up the field. Unfortunately, it was then confirmed later, no, they have to become exerted, which is how I think it should read on your turn. So because of that, you are correct. This card's terrible. It sees absolutely no play. And as you pointed out, it's very restrictive being locked into these two colors. If it was in blue, a color that could ramp, maybe then because you could get to it quicker, but in Ruby Amethyst, you cannot bring this out before turn 10 or turn 7 if you have the shift target. So if it had that board wipe power to it that you shifted in on 7, boom, 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 3 things just get exploded, I think this card could actually be an actual terror like it says it is. But because it doesn't work that way, it's unplayable and nobody even attempts this.
Does, like, red purple have like a bunch of cards that like do the thing I was talking about? It's like one ink, exert a chosen character, draw a card, or like 2 ink, exert a character, draw a card. Like, is that why this has this effect?
Yeah, that is that. So it's supposed to like be the combination of both colors. And yes, that's a very purple thing. Purple has a lot of cards that just can exert your characters. So it's in the right color for that. But again, the problem is you're already investing 10 into this, and then you have to invest these other. And there's no. If there was like an item, a purple item that you could just like every turn tap it to exert something, maybe then, but all of these effects are on like a character that can be banished, or it's just effects that aren't repeatable. So it's just way too many hoops to jump through.
Especially when you're like building around your 10 cost. There are going to be games you just never get to this point.
Yeah. When this comes down, it needs to win the game because you have to wait till turn 10. There's some games that aren't even going to go that long. So, but
if it was like a 5 cost, maybe you could consider building around it.
Right.
Like maybe it was like a 5 cost with like a 5/5 body and like one lord. Maybe it becomes a build around of like, I'm just going to kill everything, and you're going to lose the game because you can't play the game anymore.
Right. If only. All right, let's check our next dual ink. And this is, go ahead, read this for me.
This is Rhino, Power Hamster, 4 cost inkable, 4/3, shift 2. It is Epic Ball of Awesome. When it has no damage, it gains resist 2. Damage reduced to it is reduced by 2. And it quests for 2 lore. I'm going to guess immediately there is a Rhino that costs 1.
That is correct.
Shift 2 does not actually matter otherwise.
Very, very astute. Yes, there is a 1 cost Rhino.
So, as a 2-drop, this is absurd. Like, I think, because I can't imagine there are many other 2-drops that can do 5 damage in one shot. However, that's a lot of deck space and a lot of hoops to jump through. And I don't think this card reads, like, crazy for a 4-drop. And so the balance here is, A, is it worth actually, like, playing whatever the 1 cost Rhino is so you can shift into this on 2 as often as possible? And B, there are going to be games where you don't get to shift into this on 2. Is this card playable without shifting? Because I think so much of this card's power seems to be concentrated in the idea of Rhino on 1, shift on 2, now I have a card that basically is impervious until 5 ink, and I can quest with this, I can kill your stuff with it. Like, nothing is going to take this off the field until I get to that point. Because it doesn't have any other attacks. It doesn't do anything else. It's just like a sticky body. And these are hard for me to evaluate because they don't excite me at all. As like a Yu-Gi-Oh player, I want my cards to be drawing me cards, digging through things, ramping me, doing fun things like that. And this card doesn't really do that. This card kind of says, like, I'm going to take a early drop, and I'm going to, like, almost like an equip spell in Yu-Gi-Oh! As, like, I'm going to upgrade it, and it's going to be really strong for a bit until it dies. And equip spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are actually really bad. So if you haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh!, equip spells are like these equipment. They're spell cards, almost like an action that you kind of give, and it gives a card, like, a permanent buff until it leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And historically, they have not been very good because you get 2 for 1 really easily, where when the creature dies, or the character dies, you lose the equip spell as well. And that kind of happens with Rhino here. Like, if he dies, you kind of also lose the first Rhino you played too, in a way. I think because he has the mild protection, I think this guy seems pretty okay. I do like the versatility. Like I said, he can kind of quest, he can kill things and not die. I think that, like, he seems good, but I'm willing to be wrong on this just because this is a card type that I am very not good at evaluating.
You nailed this 100%, sir. So it's very appropriate because the tournament I just came from casting, this dude was everywhere. He was running over the game. He's the reason the guy who won the tournament. And the colors, Amber Steel, are what is called the Steel Song deck. So it's this deck that's all about the singers. So when you shift him in on 2, you can also immediately sing with him. And other than Whole New World, the highest cost song is like 4. So he basically can sing any song in your deck. And you nailed it because you're correct. If you just played him on 4 and then he has to sit there a whole turn and then you do something, he's fine. It's still a solid body, but it's just fine. But when you play him as a 2 cost, it's bonkers. As you're 100% right. There's just nothing that can deal with him that early. There's nothing that deals that much damage. There's nothing that can hit that hard. Basically, anything that runs into him just bounces off of him, and he's still there with no damage. Like, as a 2-drop, he's bananas and just so frustrating to play against and a menace. But as a 4-drop, you're right, he's a lot weaker, but that has not stopped any of these Steel Song players be like, nope, it's worth it, and they'll just jam it in there and be like, yep, I'm going to find the shift line because it's amazing. And again, even on 4, even though he doesn't do anything special, he's still a very solid body on 4, so you nailed it. Well done, sir.
Yeah, like I said, it sounds like on 4, he'd still be a somewhat sticky thing that's like hard to get off the field, just kind of unexciting. And I imagine by the time you're on 4, you kind of want to be doing exciting things in general.
Sure. Well, my Yu-Gi-Oh friend here wants some excitement, folks. Should we give him some excitement? Let's give him the final card of this video, and it is the Ink Geyser. This is a 3-cost uninkable action. Each player exerts all the cards in their inkwell. Then each player with more than 3 cards in their inkwell returns cards at random from their inkwell to their hand until they have 3 cards in their inkwell. I bet you didn't think I could say the word inkwell so often. What do you think, Mr. Ghoul?
Why would they print this? So there are like 2 scenarios with this card that I can think of. And neither of them, one of them sounds like the worst card in the history of time, and the other one sounds like the most unfun card in the history of time. And there is no in-between with this card. Either this card is completely terrible, or it ruins the game. Why would they print this?
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Okay, so let me kind of break this down as someone that doesn't play Lorcana and kind of give my perspective on this.
Sure.
So, on 3, this card is terrible, obviously, because neither player can have more than 3 ink. It just says exert both players' inkwell, but if you exert your opponent's inkwell, that doesn't matter because they're going to go to their turn and do stuff. Correct. Really, that each player exerts all the cards in their inkwell seems like it's mostly A, mechanical, to make sure that your opponent doesn't know which cards they're returning to their hand at random.
Yeah.
And B, you can't do this to draw a bunch of cards and then okay, I'm going to keep my 3 extra things there. Hope to have an extra one and maybe have a 1-cost play after this. And they can't deal with it. The other thing is that there's 2 things. There's 2 other things that could happen with this. Either you could just be a troll and say we're going to reset the game. We both have 10 ink in our inkwell. We've both done a bunch of garbage things, and now both of us are back to 3 ink, and neither of us plays the game for the next 4 turns, and we have effectively reset the game for no benefit to either player. Which is miserable. And it's the kind of card that, I imagine that your opponent at locals is going to give you a really dirty look if you play this card. Because they're going to go, you're joking, you're not playing this card. Come on, dude. We're playing Lorcana. Let's not do this. I'll let you take it back. We can play something else instead. And the other thing, and the only competitive use I can think of for this card is, let's say the game goes to the mid-late. I am ahead on board. I'm 100% going to win in 2 turns if nothing changes. And I know my opponent might play a board wipe. And I go, Ink Geyser, you have 3 ink next turn. You can play a card from your hand. You can go to 4. Good luck dealing with my field with 4 ink. I have a 7 cost in play or an 8 cost in play, or I shift it into a 15 cost. Can you deal with a 15 cost with 4 ink next turn? And that's really strong. So in Yu-Gi-Oh, that would be something like a Cold Wave is kind of the biggest example I can think of. It's a card that just says neither player can do spell traps until the end of the next turn. It's a card that, like, sounds really stupid. Like, why would you ever play this? But, like, it turns out, like, when you're ahead and you're going to win, and you say, you can't use spells and traps, you probably win the game if you're, like, built to do that. I hate that this card probably is playable, but I really hope for the game's sake it never is actually playable, because this is the kind of card that will need to get banned if it is ever good.
So, good or bad, or mid?
I think it's probably seeing play now, but I don't know why you would ever print this card, because nothing good is going to happen from printing this card.
You have a very similar reaction to my buddy Justin, who plays at my locals, and he is a former Magic player. And, you know, when he saw this, he also plays Yu-Gi-Oh! And he said, this is the first card that's going to be banned. This is ridiculous. He was like, well, you know, land destruction in Magic is terrible. Why would you say the same things you said? Why would you print this? Currently, this card sees 0 play. Nobody plays it. It's basically awful. Now, there are some fun tricks you can do with it in blue specifically. So blue has ways to ramp ink every turn. There's an item called the Fishbone Quill, which lets you put an extra ink into your inkwell. So if you've got that established, you can start your turn, play out, let's say you've got 5 ink, you play at 2 cost, you play Ink Geyser, you reset, then you ink naturally for turn, then you use the quill to, like, put a second ink in, and then you can do that to do a spell that does another ink. So suddenly they're stuck on 3 and you've ramped all the way back up to 6 or 7. However, and there are times, if you can get ahead, there are times I have locked out boards with this being like, oh, you were going to B-prep me next turn on turn 7? No, you're back at turn 3 actually. But I think there's just too many hoops to jump through, and it requires such a specific situation that currently it sees no play. However, my friend Justin has said just what you said as well, is that, man, even if it's not playable now, one day, if they make something that makes this, like, easy or busted, like, this card could very likely do what you said and just ruin the game entirely.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, like, land destruction is... There are nice things about it sometimes, like it can hold ramp decks back a little bit, but, like, what ends up happening is kind of what you alluded to, where sometimes the best deck to recover from land destruction is the deck that ramps.
Exactly.
Like, so there's some neat stuff there. I just, like, and I kind of like I know that the idea with these dual element cards or dual color cards is to kind of synergize, and I like the idea it's like, I can ramp, and then also, now they have a bunch of cards in their hand, the green in the deck is going to make them discard their inkwell.
Correct.
Like, that's a neat synergy.
Or it works, you know, the Clarabelle we showed earlier, right? Which gets, you get to draw for every card in their hand. If you use her with this Ink Geyser, it's like, hey, I just put 5 cards in your hand. Thanks. Clarabelle is going to fill me up too.
Yeah, like that's a neat synergy. Like, I get what they're going for with it. I just, like, I cannot see a world where this card sees play, and anybody is happy to see it being played.
Yeah, I think this is one of these that if it ever does become popular, it'll just be miserable. And with that, the end. Way to go, sir. Heck of a job. Job. You nailed a lot of these. I'll scroll back through them here as we're chatting. But well done. You did a really good job on these, and your years and years of TCG experience have clearly paid off.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. It's seeing different card games, like I said, the different things that are good and evaluating them. Everything works in the context of the game it is. Some of these cards would be completely broken in Yu-Gi-Oh, obviously, or in Magic, you know, and some of them would just be like, this card is terrible, why would you ever play this? Right. But it's like, no, in the context of the game, because, you know, removal's scarcer, or because you can't do things on your opponent's turn, because you can't interact with this, it becomes a lot stronger. It's really interesting seeing those, you know, that dichotomy across both games.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, folks, I know we've talked plenty of time for a very long time here, so I won't take up any more of your time. I'll put some of Ghoul's information in the description below if you want to check out his channel. He does great content on the Final Fantasy trading card game, does some speed runs from occasion here and there. Ghoul, anyone you want to give a shout out or anything before I let you go?
No, I think that this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. I look forward to being able to do this in another 3 sets probably, and seeing where the game goes from here.
Yeah, my pleasure, sir. Thanks for having me. Folks, if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. Follow for more great Rudrose TCG content. I appreciate you so much. And until next time, take care.